Hey, good afternoon. So we will have sustainable development goals for this afternoon. And you will see that from Millennium Development Goals, which was targeted from 2015, we have then transferred to Sustainable Development Goals. The problem of which are Millennium Development Goals. Every country would have had the same targets, same outputs. But you know that each country would be different. Now, your sustainable development goals would allow more leeway for our countries to adjust. Okay? So we have assigned groups for each SDG to discuss. So let's have our first one. I will stop share. So please share group one. Let's have our first SDG to discuss. Sorry, I have enabled share screen. You may share screen now. Okay, let's have our first SDG.
Good afternoon. My name is Manoj. Now we are discussing about the no poverty. Introduction. Globally, number of people living in extreme poverty declined from the 36% in 1990 to 10% in 2020. The pace of change is decelerating, and COVID-19 crisis rise reversing the decade from progresses in fight against the poverty. More than 700 million people, or 10% of the world population, still living in extreme poverty today. One out of eight children living in extreme poverty in nowadays. Poverty is more than the lack of income or resources. People living in poverty, if they lack of basic services such as healthcare, security, and education, they also they also experiences hunger, social discrimination, and exclusion from the decision making process. One possible alternative matrix is the multi-dimensional poverty index. Local government plays a relevant role in matters relating to the poverty. These rules differ across the world and include proper governance to fulfill the needs of the urban poor and the able to the promote importance of achieve. Next, next. Local governance plays a relevant role on the matter relevant to the poverty. These rules differ across the world and including uh, proper governance to fulfill the needs of urban poor and able to the promote accountable and ensuring including education in- inclu- inclusive education to increase the changes of employable working on the businesses ethics of the community businesses that impact the poor and the rural community. Importance of achieve no poverty. The rise of poverty is a threat to the integrity of people. Weaken social cohesion and severely hampers the economic growth. The main cause of poverty drives inequality and heightened uh, malnutrition, lack of access of education, discrimination and exclusion, increase political and social tensions, and lead to all kinds of conflict. Poverty is also expected to the rise among the working people, working population over the past decade. The ratio of workers living in extreme poverty had been gradually decreases from 14.3% in 2010 to 7.1% in 2019. In April 2020, businesses and other workplaces has been shut down. Employees and freelancers suffering the consequences. Goals in poverty in all its form of everywhere. Its objective include ensuring that the entire population and especially the poorest and the most vulnerable have especially the poorest and the most vulnerable have been equal rights to economic resources, access to basic services and property and land control, natural resources and new technologies. Sustainable developmental goals. One has two specific poverty reduction targets: eradicating extreme poverty and reduce poverty half of the half of the poverty by 2030. Five of the targets has to be reached in 2030, and there is no specific date.
And targets. Next slide, please. Eradicate extreme poverty. By 2030, eradicate extreme poverty of all people everywhere, currently measured as people living on less than $1.90 a day. It includes proportion of population living below the international poverty line, aggregated by sex, age, employment status, and geographical location. The pace of reducing extreme poverty started off well with 2010 15.7%, 2015 10%, 2019 8.2%, and it's projected in 2020 at 8.4 to 8.8%. This is because of COVID-19 pandemic is reversing the poverty reduction cycle. The world's workers living in extreme poverty fell from 14.3 to 8.3 to 7.1% in 2010, 2015, and 2019, respectively. Next slide. Reduce poverty by at least 50%. By 2030, reduce at least by half the proportion of men, women, and children of all ages living in poverty in all its dimensions, according to national definition. It includes proportion of population living below the national poverty line, proportion of men, women, and children of all ages living in poverty in all its dimensions according to national definitions. Thank you.
Um, implement national appropriate social protection systems. So this means that by 2030, they plan to have have nationally appropriate social protection systems and measures to cover everyone and anyone vulnerable, including that is free of any kind of discrimination. So it's not by sex, not by children, not whether old or young. It just covers everyone who needs it. Next slide. That build resilience to environmental and economic social disaster. So by 2030, They want to build the resilience of the poor and those in vulnerable situations and reduce their exposure and vulnerability to climate-related extreme events and other economic, social, environmental shocks and disasters. So these can be measured in 4 indicators. That's the number of deaths and missing persons or people affected by the disaster, the direct economic loss attributed to the disaster in relation to the GDP, the number of countries that adopt and implement national disaster risk reduction strategies in line with the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction between 2015 and 2030. And then lastly, it's for the proportion of local government that would adopt and implement local disaster reduction strategy in line with the national disaster risks reduction strategies. Next slide. So mobilization of resources to end poverty. So this means that they want to get resources from different sources from different countries to help and provide for like developing countries, and the proportion of the domestically generated resources allocated within the countries go to poverty reduction programs. And some of those programs include spending on essential services like education, health, social protection, and the sum of grants and non-debt credit inflow directly allocated to poverty reduction programs as proportions of GDP.
The establishment of poverty reduction policy frameworks to all levels. Create sound policy frameworks at the national, regional, and international levels based on pro-poor and gender-sensitive development strategies to support accelerated investment in poverty reduction actions. It is all about pro-poor public social spending. Impact challenges. Impact of COVID-19 and pandemic. COVID-19 has further increased the challenges of achieving zero poverty goals as well as other SDG goals by 2030. Though many alternative measures are being deployed to get the relevant data, the available tools and the methods have not been able to sufficiently address the continuously evolving climate. Furthermore, COVID-19 exposed the inequality in the global food chain. The pandemic is having resounding impact on fragile nations. For example, 15.6 million Yemeni nationals are estimated to be practically starving on a daily basis, with millions more being driven into a state of distress. Link with other SDGs. The SDGs are interlinked as one growth can positively affect another and vice versa. Reducing poverty can lead to zero hunger as lead to as hunger and poverty are connected. SDG first is linked to reduced inequalities. SDG 10 as inequality around the world remain high and poverty has significant effects on measures of inequality. At the same time, access to decent work, which has both gendered effects under gender equality, SDG 5, also affects outcomes of decent work and economic growth, SDG 8. SDG first particularly links to good health and well-being, SDG 3, as eradication of poverty will necessarily increase the standard of living. Furthermore, it affects the availability of quality education for all, SDG 4, as academic costs become unaffordable and drinking water, SDG 6, inaccessible, and many others. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So poverty. First, SDG addresses poverty, and it's good that you mentioned your COVID impact. Of course, it derailed. It's 2022, and of course, poverty has it been reduced to as much as 50%. So there are challenges in achieving these goals. And of course, we know the disparity or the inequality of the distribution of wealth among the global population. Only 1% would control about majority of the people's funds or the cash flow globally. And a big chunk of our population would live below the poverty line. And we want at least to equalize or increase the people living above the poverty line. Okay. So, of course, part of being healthy, sustainable would be addressing poverty. And that's why it's number one on your SDG. Okay, let's have our number two. Please share.
Doctor, we can start.
Go ahead.
Group 2, zero hunger. Can you go for the second slide? Introduction. In introduction, sustainable development goals, the two. For that, it is a zero hunger will be the second one. In that, United Nations in 2015, there are 17 sustainable development goals are established. In the SDG 2 has 8 targets and 14 indicators to measure the progress. Next slide. Targets and indicators. The first target 2.1, universal access to safe and nutritious food. In that, by 2030, the end hunger was ensured that the all peoples need to be get infant to be safe and nutrition sufficient food all year around. There are two indicators. Indicator 1 will be the prevalence of undernourishment, and indicator 2 will be the prevalence of moderate. That will be the population based on the food insecurity experience scale, FIES. So, next slide. The target 2.2, in all forms of malnutrition. The malnutrition will be get full, all forms of malnutrition will be end at 2030. Include the achievement 2025 itself, it will be getting some agreed targets or on standing in the wasting of children under 5 years age, and addressing the nutritional needs for the adolescent girls and for the pregnancy and lactation women and older persons. There are two indicators will be there. 2.21, it's a prevalence of stunting among the children under 5 years of age. The second indicator was prevalence of malnutrition. Next slide.
Target number 2.3, double the productivity and income of a small-scale food products. By 2030, double the productivity and income of a small-scale products producers in the particularly women, indigenous people, family farmers, prestonians, and fishers, including through secure and equal access to land, other productive resources and inputs, knowledge, financial services, markets, and opportunities for value addition and non-farm employment. It has two indicators: the volume of production per labor unit by the classes of farming, pastoral, and forestry enterprises size. And second indicator is an average income of a small scale food products by sex and indigenous status. Next slide. Target number 2.4, which is increasing productivity and production of food by enduring the sustainable food production system and implementing the resilient agricultural practices. This will help maintaining the ecosystem and strengthening capacity for adaptation to climate changes during extreme weather, flooding, and other disasters, and that progressively improve the land and soil quality. It has the one indicator, that is a proportion of an agricultural area under productive and sustainable agriculture. Next slide. Next target is to secure the genetic diversity in the food production by properly maintaining the genetic diversity of seeds, cultivated plants, domesticated animals, and the relative wild species in the plant plant banks, either in the regional level, national level, or international levels. And they promote giving access to the fair, equal, and sharing benefits and knowledge that arises from the utilization of genetic resources. It has two indicators. One is the number of plants and genetic resources for food and agriculture secured in either medium or long-term conservation faculties. Another thing is a proportion of an local breeds classified as being a risk at or at the risk or at the unknown level of risk of extinction.
Next, we are going to discuss about target 2.A. It's that invest in rural infrastructure, agriculture research, technology, and gene banks. Regarding the rural infrastructure, that's where we grow the agriculture, which only help to achieve the zero hunger. For this, most infrastructure to be increased in the agriculture in the rural area, technology development, plant and livestock gene banks, so that the agriculture production capacity in the developing countries, especially in the underdeveloped countries, will be increased. The two indicators in this are agriculture orientation index for government. Second one is total official flows to the agriculture sector. Next slide. Prevent agricultural trade restrictions. We know that there are certain crops which are native to some of the countries are restricted for the trading to other countries. So we have to prevent those trade restrictions and distortions in the agriculture markets. By doing this, so the countries which have more hunger can be easily fed, which can be effectively done in accordance with the mandate of Doha Development Round done by World Trade Organization. It has two indicators: producer support estimate, and next one is agriculture export subsidies. Next one, last but not least, stable food commodity markets and timely access. Whenever the food comes, the time is very important. One, it is perishable even for the reserved food in order to help limit extreme food price volatility. It has one indicator, an indicator of food price anomalies.
Hello, doctor. I'm going to discuss about custodial agencies and their tools. The custodial agencies are in charge of monitoring the progress of indicators. Those custodial agencies are the Food and Agriculture Organization of United Nations, FAO, United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, the World Health Organization, WHO, and the United Nations Environmental Program, UNEP, and Organization for Economic and Cooperation and Development, which is OECD, the United Nations World Tourism Organization, UNWTO. I am going to discuss about tools which are used by custodial agencies. They are Global Hunger Index and FAO Food Price Index. The Global Hunger Index is a tool designed to measure the track, and also you have to track the hunger at regional, global, and national levels. And they are designed to raise the awareness and understanding against the struggle against the hunger. And also they provide the ways to compare the level of hunger between the countries and regions. And they also calls the attention to the area where the hunger level are highest. And so we can put additional efforts that are needed to eliminate the hunger. Moving on to Food and Price Index. This is FAO Food Price Index, FFPI. It's a measure of monthly change in international prices of basket of food commodities. Next slide, please. So let's see the overall progress and challenges. So to achieve the progress towards zero hunger, the world needs to build a political will and also the country ownership. It also needs to improve the narrative around nutrition to make sure that it is well understood by all political leaders, especially for the all political leaders, it should be understood. And so they can address the gender inequality, geographic inequality, and absolute poverty. It also calls for the concrete action, including the working at sub-national levels, and also like they can increase the nutrition funding by ensuring that they target for first 1,000 days of the life, so that they can go beyond their goals to achieve the zero hunger. The zero hunger targets ignore the importance of value chains and food chain system. So among the target of zero hunger, they are the micronutrient macronutrient deficiencies. But they do not indicate the overconsumption or consumption of food which are high in fat, salt, and sugars. So they ignore the health problem associated with such diets. Zero hunger targets the purpose of doubling of agricultural productivity and the incomes for small scale farmers. But here they ignore the large scale farmers. They can also earn relatively low incomes from farming. And it also addressed the sustainable agriculture, like without clarifying what sustainable agriculture exactly means. And so the zero hunger, they are like deeply connected with other goals. So all goals could be affected in progress on the one specific goal it's not achieved. So let's talk about impact on COVID-19 pandemic on zero hunger. Like COVID-19 pandemic and lockdown has placed a huge amount on pressure of agriculture production, so they can disrupt the global value and the supply chain. Subsequently, it can lead to the rise of overall market value of the food and also grains, and also they can raise the issue of malnutrition, inadequate food supplies to the household, and so the poorest country will suffer. And also during COVID-19, the transportation was blocked. So the sustainable agriculture, it was also in the verge of problem, so that we cannot achieve zero hunger during this global pandemic. And this novel coronavirus epidemic, they had spread the overall worldwide, which can cause the interference in international grain market. That was said previously, that it can if the international grain market was interfered, and so the food cost will be high, and so the everybody will suffer. Thank you, ma'am.
So the second SDG would be food, and it's not as simple as providing food on the table. Sustainability of production, equality of distribution, and rural agriculture and the like. Okay, often we see the news. What happens? Farmers would produce food, but it would rot. Third group, please share already. But it would rot because it cannot reach the consumers. So your SDG 2 also tries to address that. Okay, so, and as mentioned, again, your SDG 1, 2, and all your other SDGs could form a web of causation. It is interrelated with one another. So if there is poverty, of course you cannot have adequate food, etc., etc. Okay, so let's have our next SDG. Let's have our third.
Excuse me, please.
Good afternoon, Doctor. This is Group 3 presenting to you one of the goals of sustainable development, that is good health and well-being. Next slide. Children and women of reproductive age, particularly in antenatal and postnatal care, constitute an important part of the discussion for this topic, along with the other facilities required for a good health and good lifestyle, such as medical facilities, vaccines, and everything. So talking about the child health, approximately 17,000 fewer children die each day than in 1990s, but still more than 6 million children die before the age of 5 years each year. Since 2000, the measles vaccine have helped in the decline of the deaths in approximately nearly 15.6 millions. But despite this global progress, there is still increasing proportion of child deaths reported in the sub-Saharan Africa and Southern Asia. The reports say that 4 out of every 5 deaths of children under 5 years of age occur in these regions. Next slide. The children born in poverty are almost twice likely to die before the age of 5 years as then from those in the wealthier families. Also, there's a striking factor that children of educated mothers, even the mothers who are only primarily schooled, are more likely to survive than the children born to mothers with no education. This shows the importance of education to the mothers in their pre-delivery and the post-delivery, that is antenatal and postnatal duration. Next slide. Maternal health. The maternal mortality rate has fallen by almost 50% since 1990. In Eastern Asia, Northern Africa, and Southern Asia, the maternal mortality rate has declined by around 2/3. But still, this ratio in developing region is still 4 times higher than in the developed regions. Also, in developing regions, the antenatal care has increased from 65% in 1990 to 83% in 2012, showing the awareness has already developed in the ladies. Only half of women in developing regions receive the recommended amount of healthcare they need. Also, there's a report that fewer teens are having children in most developing regions, but progress has already slowed. The increase was seen in contraceptive use in the 1990s, but it is not present as much in the 2000s.
Sustainable development is the third goal and is one of the 17 sustainable development goals established by United Nations in 2005. The official wording for it is to ensure healthy lives and promote well-being at all stages of life. The targets of SDG 3 cover and focus on various aspects of healthy life and healthy lifestyle. Progress towards the target is measured using 21 indicators. SDG 3 aims to achieve universal health coverage that seeks equitable access of healthcare services to all men and women. It proposes to end the preventable death of newborns, infants, children under 5 years of age, and epidemics. Good health is essential to sustainable development and the 2030 agenda. It focuses on broader economic and social inequalities, urbanization, climate crisis, continuing burden of HIV and other infectious diseases, not forgetting emerging challenges such as non-communicable diseases. Considering the global pandemic of COVID-19, there is a need to give significant attention towards the realization of good health and well-being on a global scale. Ensuring that every child survives and thrives depend on a combination of high-impact interventions, including quality antenatal delivery, postnatal care of mothers and their newborns, prevention of mother-to-child transmission of HIV/AIDS, immunization to protect children from infectious disease, and access to adequate and nutritious food. Next.
Facts and figures: HIV, AIDS, malaria, and other diseases. At the end of 2014, there were 13.6 million people assessing antiretroviral therapy. New HIV infections in 2013 were estimated at 2.1 million, which was 38% lower than in 2001. At the end of 2013, there were an estimated 35 million people living with HIV. At the end of 2013, 240,000 children were newly infected with HIV. New HIV infections among children have declined by 58% since 2001. Globally, adolescent girls and young women face gender-based inequalities, exclusions, discriminations, and violence, which put them at increased risk of acquiring HIV. HIV is the leading cause of death for women of reproductive age worldwide. TB-related deaths in people living with HIV have fallen by 36% since 2004. There were 250,000 new HIV infections among adolescents in 2013, two-thirds of which were among adolescent girls. AIDS is now the leading cause of death among adolescents aged 10 to 19 in Africa, and the second most common cause of death among adolescents globally. In many settings, adolescent girls' right to privacy and bodily auto autonomy is not respected, as many report that their first sexual experience was forced. As of 2013, 2.1 million adolescents were living with HIV. Over 6.2 million malaria deaths have been averted between 2000 and 2015, primarily of children under 5 years of age in sub-Saharan Africa. The global malaria incidence rate has fallen by an estimated 37% and the mortality rate by 58%. 58%. Between 2000 and 2013, tuberculosis prevention, diagnosis, and treatment intervention saved an estimate 37 million lives. The TB mortality rate fell by 45% and prevalence rate by 41% between 1990 and 2013. Next slide.
Facts and figures. COVID-19. It is difficult to maintain a healthy lifestyle when we are in the middle of the pandemic. There are so many uncertainty and worries about the children, finance, parents, job security, which disrupts our lifestyle and our mental health. Uncertainty about the future, constant news, and social media facts often increases the sense of anxiety. Stress is a normal response to these type of situation. Stress disturb our sleep pattern, eating pattern, and often leads to irritability, low motivation, emotional outbursts, etc. Next slide, please. Globally, as of 5:39 p.m. Central European Summer Time on 23rd of September 2022, there have been 611,421,786 confirmed cases of COVID-19, including 6,512,438 deaths reported to WHO. As of 19th of September 2022, total 12,640,066,343 vaccines have been administered. Newly reported cases in the last 7 days were 3,025,726. As for the Japan, it was 4,30,531, and for USA, it is 3,81,319. Newly reported deaths in USA were 2,550, and in Japan, it was 830. Total vaccine dose administered per 100 population was 162.18%. Thank you.
So good health and well-being. Again, with the pandemic, group 4, could you start sharing already while I am discussing? With the pandemic, it's hard to say that we are in good health and well-being with all the anxiety. Both health, economic, quality of life has been affected. And it included, most likely, if we will reevaluate our SDGs, COVID-19 will be very much factored in if ever there would be an SDG with a target of 2040 or 2050. Correct? Because the pandemic will be part of our lives. Your good health, okay, maternal and child care. I'm sure we will get that to later. It has a separate SDG. Tuberculosis, HIV, malaria, these are all diseases that will drastically affect quality of life. Okay? So, of course, if we are not healthy, what does preventive medicine say? If we are not healthy, we cannot be productive members of our society. Okay. SDG 4, please.
Ma'am, good afternoon, ma'am. I'm trying to share the screen, ma'am, once.
What's the problem? If it won't work, let's go to SDG 5 first.
Ma'am,
Go
I'm
back.
not able to share my PPT, ma'am.
Could someone else in your group share?
No, ma'am. Actually, they are not responding. Actually.
We'll go back to you, Siva.
Okay,
Can we
ma'am.
have SDG 5? You Siva, could you send to any of your classmates so that they could share screen?
Ma'am, yes, ma'am. I'm trying asking people.
Yeah.
Okay,
Could
ma'am.
someone help out Siva? And it is noted that you worked on this alone. Your group mates didn't work with you.
Yes, ma'am.
Can we have SDG 5 first? While they're trying to fix.
My group mates are also trying, ma'am. Ma'am, it's done, ma'am.
Okay, go ahead.
The manual start. Actually,
Yes, go ahead.
Ma'am, can you go with the fifth group, ma'am, so that we will be clear within that? Meanwhile,
What do you want?
how much? And um, ma'am, can you give us time, ma'am? Can you go with the fifth group so that meanwhile, we will be ready with the sharing
Okay.
PPT, ma'am?
SDG 5, please.
Thank you, ma'am.
Let's go back to SDG 4 in a while. Could we have SDG 5 first?
Good afternoon, doctor. This is Group 5, Balaji Rahul. Shall we start our presentation?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, doctor.
Good afternoon, doctor. We are group 5, the ultimate guide to gender equality. What it is, why it's important, and how it affects. Next slide. Gender equality is also known as sexual equality or equality of the sexes. It is the state of equal ease of access to resources and opportunities, including economic participation and decision making, and the state of valuing different behaviors, aspirations, and needs equally. It is not only a fundamental human right, but a necessary foundation for a peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable world. Next slide. It makes our communities safer and healthier. Unequal societies are less cohesive. They have higher rates of antisocial behavior and violence. Countries with greater gender equality are more connected. Their people are healthier and have better well-being. Next slide.
Why gender equality is important in society. Here are 10 reasons why it is important. It saves life. Because of their lack of empowerment and resource in many places, women and girls face life-threatening risks. Natural disasters are one example. At the 2005 World Conference on Disaster Reduction, experts discussed how gender inequality plays a role in death and injury. Other data shows that climate change, which makes natural disaster more dangerous, puts women and girls in even more vulnerable position. Second, it results in better health care. Research shows that in general, women receive worse medical care than men. These are many reasons for this, including lack of education and lower incomes. Third, it helps business. When women receive the same education and job opportunities as men, they can improve any organization they join. Study shows that the diversity of all types like gender, race, sexual identity, etc. increases an organization productivity and innovation. Fourth, it's good for economy. Women impact doesn't stop with individual companies and organizations. Study shows that increasing women's participation in the economy is good for the economy. Fifth, children are healthier. When women make their own reproductive choices, they provide better care for the children they do have. With income option equal to men, mothers can offer education, healthcare, and healthier food to their children. Six, it leads to better legal protection.
Next slide. It leads to better legal protections. Under the law, women are not well protected from domestic, sexual, and economic violence. Both of these types of violence affect a woman's safety and freedom. Seventh, it leads to better racial equality. Gender equality and race equality are closely linked. Within issues like the gender pay gap, race plays a big role. Eighth, it reduces poverty. Poverty rates are the highest among young girls. As boys and girls get older, the gender gap in poverty gets larger. Ninth, it reduces human trafficking. While men are also victims of human trafficking, women and girls make up the majority. They are more vulnerable and traffickers see them as easier targets. 10th, it can lead to peace. Research shows that gender equality is linked to peace, even more so than a country's GDP or level of democracy. States with better gender equality are less likely to use military force. Next slide.
Things we can do to achieve gender equalities are mentioned here. There are 6 points that our group has thought of. And the first point is give girls equal access to education, because through education they can get better jobs and they can be aware of many more things in the world. So that way they can achieve equally as men. And then the second point is give equal power and achieve economic success to women and girls. This way they get to be in an environment where they can have equal opportunities as men. Assure the girls and women have access to menstrual health and facilities. And the fourth point is stop stereotyping men and women's role. And fifth is equal pay for equal work. Sixth is share workloads at home. Next slide.
Next slide. Things that countries have done to promote gender equality. Argentina's gender identity law, which was adopted in 2012, allows for legal gender recognition based solely on an individual's self-determination. Germany's Wage Transparency Act of January 6, 2018 allowed companies with more than 200 employees to find out the median remuneration of a colleague of the opposite sex in the same or comparable role. Rwanda's political representation adopted in 2003 mandates that 30% of the parliamentary seats be reserved for women. Pakistan's Transgender Person Act 2018 prohibits discrimination against transgender people in school, at work, and on public modes of transit. Iceland equal pay law requires companies to demonstrate that their wages are fair. Any public or private body or in Iceland employing more than 25 people that has not been independently certified as paying equal wages for work of equal value will be faced daily fine. Sweden's parental law leaves provide 480 days of paid parental leave to be used for children before 8. Two-parent household gets more benefit. Norway board member. Next slide, please. Norway's board membership rule requires that women make up 40% of public listed companies' board. New Zealand sex worker discrimination prohibits protects sex workers' right through employment and human rights legislation. The United Kingdom National Health Service covers abortion and treatment for gender dysphoria. Canada puts an end to tampon tax and other menstrual products. Morocco's laws on domestic worker passes a law that requires proper labor contracts for domestic workers, limits the daily working hours, guarantees days off and paid vacation. Next slide. Thank you.
Okay, simply put, would SDG 4 be ready? Could you try again?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We are ready.
Simply put, your SDG 5 aims to put gender equality at the forefront. Okay, you've seen a lot of laws that tries to equalize. Why are there laws that specifically target equalizing women and children's rights? Because truth of the fact is gender inequality is existing. If it is not existent, laws would not be needed to be in place. But the fact is there is an existing gender inequality. So from this because um, previous society were patriarchal, which were male based. And it's only now it's starting that gender equality has pushed through. Okay, let's hear from group 4. Hopefully this works now.
Emmanuel, start.
Go ahead.
Next slide. Next slide, please. Quality education. This is Ratni Cinderella from Group 4. Quality education. Education at the heart of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable. Previous slide. For yeah. Education is at the heart of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. It is identified as a standalone goal, development goal for 4, and it is also present as targets under the SDGs on health, growth, and employment, sustainable consumption and production, and climate change, ensuring lifelong learning opportunities for all from early childhood and adult education, ensuring equality, inclusion, and gender equality, ensuring effective learning and the acquisitive of relevant knowledge, skills, and competence, ensuring the relevance of learning in the terms of vocation and technical skills for this decent work, as well as for global citizenship in plural and interconnected world. Next page, please. Next page. Target. Next page. Things to be ensured before 2030. Equitable and quality in primary and secondary education for children and early childhood development, care, and primary education. Provide safe, non-violent, inclusive, and effective learning, and increase the supply for qualified teachers. Equal access of affordable and quality technique for both men and women. Achieve literacy and numeracy. Increase the number of youth and adults who have relevant snails education, including technical and vocational skills for employment, decent jobs, and entrepreneurships. Next page, please. Next page. Next page. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. Bharat. Next slide. Ma'am, there is. Bro, change the slides. Next slide, please. Previous slide. The previous slide. Okay. Eliminate gender disparities in education and ensure equal access to all levels of education and include persons with disabilities, indigenous people. Among the education, children should be taught about the development and sustainable lifestyles, human rights, gender equality, a culture of peace and non-violence, global citizenship and of culture development. Next slide, please. More than 50% of children remain out of school and live in conflict-affected areas. More than 100 million people lack basic literacy skills. More among them are women. Next. Education. Education is both the act of teaching knowledge to others and act of receiving knowledge from someone else. In its technical sense, education is the process by which the society deliberately transmits its accumulated knowledge, skills, and values from one generation to another. Next slide, please. Structure. Education in the Philippines is offered through formal and non-formal systems. Formal education is typically spans 14 years and is structured in 6+4+4 system. 6 years of primary school education, 4 years of secondary school education, and 4 years of higher education, leading to the bachelor's degree. This is one of the shortest term for formal education in the world. Next. Primary education. Primary school education in the Philippines spans 6 years in duration and is compulsory for all students. This level of education is divided into 4-year primary cycle and 2 years of intermediate cycle. In the country's public school, Filipino children generally begin school at age of 6 or 7. However, private schools typically start a year earlier and operate a 7-year curriculum rather than the 6-year curriculum. Next page. Primary cycle, 4 years grades 1 to 4, age 6 to 11. Intermediate cycle, grade 5 to 6, age 11 to 13. There are a number of core subjects that are taught with varying degrees of difficulty in 6 grades of primary schools. Next. Rajkumar.
Secondary education. Although secondary education is not compulsory in the Philippines, it's widely attended, particularly in the more urban areas of the country. At, at this level, private school enroll as much higher percentage of students than at the elementary level. According to the statistics from the Department of Education, roughly 45% of country's high schools are private, enrolling about 21% of all secondary school students. Next slide. Higher education, bachelor degree, master degree, PhD degrees, non-universities, higher education, vocational and technical. Next slide. Next slide. Universal access to education is the ability of all people to have equal opportunity in education regardless of their social class, gender, intensity, with background or physical and mental disabilities. Next slide. Thank you, Doctor.
Okay, so education is also one critical aspect, and you know that it's interrelated. You know that public health hinges a lot on awareness and education and education should be accessible to both genders, okay, and not for predominantly male, so that we could alleviate everyone from poverty. Okay, so so SDG 4 is education. Okay, let's have SDG 6.
Good evening, ma'am. We are group number 6, and our topic is clean water and sanitation. Next slide. Clean water and sanitation. To ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. There is enough fresh water on the earth to provide everyone with access to clean water, which is necessary component of the world we want to live in. However, millions of people, including children, die every year from illness linked to insufficient water supply, sanitation, and hygiene owing to poor economics or poor infrastructure. Safe and affordable drinking water. By 2030, achieve a universal and equitable access to water and affordable drinking water for all, and open defecation and provide access to sanitation and hygiene. By 2030, achieve access to educate and equitable sanitation and hygiene for all, and open defecation, paying special attention to the needs of women and girls and those in vulnerable situations. Improve water quality, wastewater treatment, and safe reuse. By 2030, improve water quality by reducing pollution, eliminating dumping, and minimizing release of hazardous chemicals and material, halving the proportion of untreated wastewater and substantially increasing recycling and safe reuse globally. Protect and restore water-related ecosystem. By 2020, protect and restore water-related ecosystems including mountains, forests, wastelands, wetlands, rivers, aquifers, and lakes.
Increase water use efficiency and ensure fresh water supplies. By 2030, substantially increase water use efficiency across all sectors and ensure substantial withdrawals and supply of fresh water to address water scarcity and substantially reduce the number of people suffering from water scarcity. Implement integrated water resources management. By 2030, implement integrated water resources management at all levels, including through transboundary cooperation as appropriate. Expand water and sanitation support to developing countries. By 2030, expand international cooperation and capacity building support to developing countries in water and sanitation related activities and programs, including water harvesting, desalination, water efficiency, wastewater treatment, recycling, and reuse of technologies. Support local engagement in water and sanitation management. Support and strengthen the participation of local communities in improving water and sanitation management. Some facts are 2.4 billion people lack access to basic sanitation services such as toilets and latrines. Each day, nearly 1,000 children die due to preventable water and sanitation related diarrheal diseases. At least 892 million people continue to practice open defecation. 1 in 4 healthcare facilities lack basic water services. Women and girls are responsible for water collection in 80% of households without access to water on premises. 3 in 10 people lack access to safely managed drinking water services, and 6 in 10 people lack access to safely managed sanitation facilities.
Things to do. Talk about the lack of toilets in many communities around the world. Don't overuse water. Get a water meter to keep a check
on your water usage. Organize a cleanup project for river and oceans. The whole community can engage in the same.
Lessen your carbon footprint. For example, limit your meat consumption and avoid plastic waste products. Raise awareness in community, support conservation efforts, and be an eco-conscious consumer. Thank you.
Okay. Clean water and sanitation. It's easy to think because our world or the earth is composed of three-fourths water, right? But you think that it's infinite, but it has limits also. And what is potable is limited. There may be an abundance of water, but not every water source would be potable for drinking. Okay. As mentioned, you should be conserving water even if there's water in the faucet. You have to reduce your carbon footprint such that our resources would be concerned. And in relation, we will have SDG 7, which then is affordable and clean energy. Okay, go ahead.
Hello, Doctor. Good afternoon. This is Pawan here. We are Group 7 reporting on affordable and clean energy. So firstly, what do we mean by affordable and clean energy? So ensuring universal access to affordable electricity by 2030 means investing in clean energy source such as solar and wind and thermal. So what are the examples? So as I mentioned, solar, wind, even those are kind of examples. Also hydropower, biofuels, natural gas, petroleum, uranium. All these are one of like few of the examples of energies, like affordable and clean energies. So why do we need affordable and clean energies? To ensure access to afford reliable and sustainable and modern energy for all of us in the future. So next slide. So here are the targets where 7.1, which is universal access to modern energy. So UN has given the definition by 2030, ensuring universal access to affordable, reliable, and modern energy services. So access to electricity definition, the proportion of population with access to electricity. This is measured as the share of people with electricity access at the household levels. It comprises electricity sold commercially, both on grid and off grid. Goals are by 2030, ensure universal access to affordable, reliable, and modern energy services. This required universal access to electricity by 2030. So access to clean fuels for cooking. Definitions. The proportion of population with primary reliance on clean fuels and technology. This is measured as the share of the total population with access to clean fuels and technologies for cooking. Access to clean fuels or technologies such as clean cookstoves reduce exposure to indoor air pollutants, a leading cause of death in low-income households. Goals are by 2030, ensure universal access to affordable, reliable, and modern energy services. This require universal access to clean fuels and technologies for cooking by 2030. So target 7.2, which is the increase global percentage of renewable energy. You have given the definition. So by 2030, increase sustainability, the share of renewable energy in the global energy mix. Renewable energy, what is definition? So renewable energy share in the total final energy consumption. This is measured as renewable energy that is inclusive of solar, wind, geothermal, hydropower, bioenergy, and also the marine sources as a share of final energy consumption. So which will also be not considered as a not primary one. Energy mix includes electricity, transportation, and cooking or heat fuels. Goals are by 2030, increase sustainability, the share of renewable energy in the global energy mix. What is target 3? Double the improvement in energy efficiency. UN has given definition by 2030, double the global rate of improvement in energy efficiency. What is energy efficiency? Energy efficiency is an intensity measured in terms of primary energy and GDP. This is measured as the energy intensity of economics, which is collectively across all the sectors. Energy intensity is measured as the quantity of kilowatt hours produced per 2011 international dollars of gross domestic product, which is KWH per 2011 international dollar. So what are goals? By 2030, double the global rate of improvement in energy efficiency. What is target 7, which is under A? So promote access, technology, and investments in clean energy. UN has given the definition. By 2030, enhance international cooperation to facilitate access to clean energy research and technology, including renewable energy, energy efficiency, and advanced and cleaner fossil fuel technology, and promote investment in energy infrastructure and clean energy technology. Access and investments in clean energy technology, which means international financial flows to development and developing countries and supporting of clean energy research and development and renewable energy production, including in hybrid systems. What are the goals? Enhance international cooperations to facilitate access to clean energy research and technology, including renewable energy, energy efficiency, and advanced and cleaner fossil fuel technology, and promote investment in energy infrastructure and clean energy technology by 2030. To target 7B, expand and upgrade energy service for developing countries. UN has given definition. By 2030, expand infrastructure and upgrade technology for supplying modern and sustainable energy services for all in developing countries, in particular least developed countries. So small island developing states and landlocked developing countries in accordance with their respective programs of support. Expanding energy service of developing countries, uh, which is defined in investments in energy efficiency as a proportion of GDP and the amount of foreign direct investments in financial transfer for infrastructure and technology to sustainable development services. Goal: expand infrastructure and upgrade technology for supplying modern and sustainable energy services for all in developing countries by 2020.
The energy is central. Energy is central nearly every major challenge and opportunity the world faces today, be it for jobs and most of the energies are essentials such for the jobs, security, climate change, and food production, increasing incomes to the employees. And working towards the goal is especially for the government to develop an sustainable goals for the renewable energy, focusing on universal access energy, increase energy efficiency, increase use of renewable energy. Renewable energy are some of the energies which are continuous and clean energies, which goes throughout the economics and job opportunities is crucial, creating more sustainable and inclusive communities. And relates to the environment issues such as climate changes. At the current time, there are approximate 3 billion peoples who lack clean cooking solutions, and they are majorly disposed to the dangerous types of air pollutions and for the bio accidents. Additionally, this slight less than 1 billion people are functioning without electricity, and 50% of them are found in sub-Saharan African alone. Fortunately, the progress has been made in the past decade regarding the use of renewable electricity from the water, solar, wind power, and ratio of the energy used per unit of CDP is also declining. However, the challenge for the government is far being solved, and there need to be more access to the clean fuel and technology, and more progress need to be regarding to the integrating renewable energy into the end use of application in the buildings, transport, industry, and when it comes to the sectors like publics and private, investment in the energies also need to be increased, and there needs to be more focus on regulatory frameworks and innovative business models to transform the world's energy systems.
things to do save energy and focus. Set the mindset to the renewable energies. Switch off your applications at this sockets when not using, and turn off air conditions when it is not used. Buy rechargeable electronics. Do not buy one-use batteries, and don't use multiple devices at the same time. Be mindful about and only several devices when absolutely necessary. Use solar sources and solar technology like radio, charger, lights, etc. Thank you.
Ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. Here, the lack of access to energy supplies and transformation system is a constraint to help the human and economic development. The environment provides a series of renewable and non-renewable energy resources such as solar energy, wind, hydropower, geothermal, biofuels, natural gas, coal, petroleum, and uranium. These are the affordable and the clean energy systems. Next slide. Increased use of fossil fuels without actions to mitigate greenhouse gases, which have global climate change implications. Here, the energy efficiency and increased use of renewable contribute to climatic change mitigation and disaster risk reduction. Here, the maintaining and protecting ecosystems allow using and the further developing hydropower sources such as electricity and bioenergy. There are some factors which are linked to the energy. Next slide. Pavan, next slide. There are some factors. The 3 billion people rely on the wood, coal, charcoal, or animal waste for cooking and heating. Energy is the dominant contributor to the climatic changes. Around 60% of total global greenhouse gases are the emissions. Since 1990, global emissions of CO2 has increased by more than 46%. Next, move on to the hydropower and the bioenergy. Next slide, Pavan. Here comes the hydropower is the largest single renewable electricity source today, providing 16% of world electricity at competitive prices. It dominates the electricity mix in several countries, which is developed, emerging, or developing countries. The bioenergy is the single largest renewable energy source today, which is providing 10% of world primary energy supply. Thank you.
Okay, so we have to have affordable and clean energy. Okay, we know that our energy resources are slowly dwindling and we are trying to veer away from coal. Gas supply would also be a commodity with the continuing increase in prices of production of gas. So we have to look for alternative sources of energy. Now, solar is being pushed, wind power is being used. So these are deemed cleaner sources of energy, albeit a little more expensive to produce at the onset, but eventually this will become mainstream, hopefully. Okay, and we will turn back on coal and gas as sources of energy. Okay, let's have the next SDG. So this is SDG 8.
Hello. Good evening, doctor. Good afternoon, doctor. Am I audible? Excuse me. Am I audible?
Go ahead.
Hello, guys. Can someone tell me if I'm audible or not, please?
Abhishek, you can go ahead. No audible.
Okay. So our topic is decent work and economic growth. This is group 8.
Next slide, please. So promote sustained, inclusive and sustainable economic growth. Actually, the economic growth is important for development because if there is stable and sustainable economic growth, there would be a stable development and it will lead to a good quality of life. So the population would be happy. So economic growth is very important in the whole society. Promote development oriented policies that support productive how to have the economic growth and how to better the society. This is how we are going to learn from this slide. So promote development oriented policies that support productive activities, decent job creation, entrepreneurship, creativity and innovation, and encourage the formalization and growth of micro, small and medium sized enterprises, including thorough access to financial services. This will help the society, like society as a whole, from the smallest businessman to the biggest one, to grow. Generally, if the packages like economic incentives are given to the bigger investors or the bigger businessmen, the general population can't grow. So this is for the general population. Economic growth can be made sustainable through expanding domestic, regional, and international markets, enabling investment and sharing knowledge, increasing trade opportunities, and improving the competitiveness of enterprises. Unlocks new areas for growth. These actions also mitigate the exposure of developing countries to external economic risk. So the economics productivity refers to how much output can be produced with a given set of input. So how much can we get from certain amount of work or certain amount of supplies. Okay, so that's productivity. So as if we keep the supplies same or if we keep the input same and if our output increases, the productivity increases. In the same way, productivity is the same, but if we are not giving that much input, if the output is same and if you are not giving that much input, that means the productivity has increased. So it is generally just getting more out of less work or getting more out of the same amount of work we are putting into something. So achieve higher levels of economic productivity through diversification, technological upgrading and innovation, including through a focus on high value added and labor intensive sectors. Preserving the environment is key to support sustained economic growth as the natural environment plays an important role in supporting economic activities. Like if we have natural resources, like if we have good amount of food for general population, for working population, it will naturally be helpful for business activities because workers would be well fed and they would be able to work more easily. That's just one example of this. Sustained and inclusive economic growth is a prerequisite for sustainable development. As I said before, for development, economic growth is very important. It can contribute to improved livelihoods for people around the world. Economic growth can lead to new and better employment opportunities and provide greater economic security for all, which is very important in day-to-day life for the whole population. Thank you.
Good evening, Doctor. Myself, Srivastav Pragati. Decent work and economic growth. Next slide. Decent work. Health and employment are closely linked. Decent work instills self-worth in people. It provides a sense of purpose and fulfillment and keep people connected. The material and emotional resources associated with employment improve living conditions from individual and household and their mental and physical health, ultimately benefiting all of society and economic large. Overall, improving health and ensuring no one is left behind contribute to economic growth and development and influences microeconomic inductor. In virtuous cycles, good health is a motor of employment. It increases the chance of finding a job and being more productivity while at it. Conversely, people in a poor health are less productivity. For example, all being equal, people of working age who access their health to be poor have much higher chance of being absent for work at the same point because of health problem. Overall, improving health and industry, one is left behind contribute to economic growth and development and influence microeconomic indicators such as gross domestic product and unemployment rate, as well as microeconomic indicators such as household consumption, health, nutrition, arms, and education. Next slide. Having the health system economic growth. The health system can support economic growth, improve the health and well-being of workforce and provides good quality work. The health system should work in partnership with Ministry of Labor and Employment to achieve these goals. Health system can play an increasingly important role in driving inclusive and sustainable development through responsible practice in the area of employment and purchasing of goods and service. Next slide. By utilizing the resources and asset within community and by taking responsible approach to employment, job creation and the production of goods and service, health system can transform local economic by making them more inclusive and sustainable. Next slide. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Jayant Malhotra and I will be talking about one of the Sustainable Development Goals, full and productive employment and decent work for all. Next slide, please. The main aim is that by 2030, to achieve full and productive employment and decent work for all men and women, including for young people and persons with disabilities, as well as equal pay for work of equal value. Take immediate and effective measures to eradicate forced labor, end modern slavery, and human trafficking. Next slide, please. Secure the prohibition and elimination of the worst forms of child labor, including recruitment and use of child as soldiers, and by 2025 end child labor in all its forms.
ఎలక్ట్రిక్ బస్సుల ప్రత్యేకతలేంటో మరింత సమాచారం మా ప్రతినిధి రాజు అందిస్తారు. పర్యావరణాన్ని కాపాడుకోవడంలో
Would you unmute report presenter? Sorry.
Yes, continuing further, protect labor rights and promote safe and secure working environments for all workers, including migrant workers, in particular, women migrants and those in precarious employment. Next slide, please. By 2030, devise and implement policies to promote sustainable tourism that creates jobs and promotes local culture and products. Strengthen the capacity of domestic financial institutions to encourage and expand access to banking, insurance, and financial services for all. Increase aid for trade support for developing countries, in particular, the least developed countries. Next slide, please. And that will be all.
Now we'll be looking into 5 reasons decent work is a priority of the Sustainable Development Goals. First one is because work touches everyone. No country is immune to a lack of decent work. Anybody who needs to earn a living will have to work. 670 million jobs have to be created by 2030. Second reason is because decent work will drive development. ILO research shows that developing countries that have invested in quality jobs are growing faster. The third reason, because decent work is what people want. A Gallup World Poll ranked access to good jobs as the #1 priority. If there is a good job that is being offered, that will also drive the development and people will want to work in that particular country or the sector as well. Fourth reason, because decent work transforms societies for the better. Any decent work is inclusive. It will include all stratas of the society, equitable, and it is promoting sustainable development. The fifth reason, because the quality of jobs, not just the quantity, at stake. Everyone is entitled to decent work. Thank you.
So this is closely related. Of course, you have to have decent work to get yourself out of poverty. And of course, that would be the driving force of communities to fuel economic growth. Okay? We could have two more. SDG 9, please. Okay, while your screen sharing, please upload it in Teams. Name it SDG 1, and then, for example, poverty, and so on and so forth, so that your classmates can review it for the exam. Okay, so please upload your presentations on Teams. I will make a folder for SDG presentations. Okay, SDG 9, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Now we will presenting Sustainable Development Goal 9, that is industry, innovation and infrastructure. Next slide. Goal: develop quality, reliable, sustainable and resilient infrastructure, including regional and transport infrastructure to support incoming development and human well-being, with a focus on affordable and equitable access for all. Next. Motive: to promote economic growth, social development, and climate action. These goals are heavily developed on investments in infrastructure, sustainable industrial development, as well as technological progress. Due to continuously changing global economics as well as increasing inequality, industrialization must occur for sustained growth. SDG 9 recognized that humanity ability to connect and communicate effectively and develop our expertise in industry and technology is crucial in overcoming the may interlinked in economic, social, and environmental challenges.
Outcome targets. Next. Next slide. Next slide, Aditya. Okay, develop sustainable, resilient, and inclusive infrastructure. Building resilient infrastructure and communities will support state, local communities, tribes, and territories as they undertake a hazard mitigation project, reducing the risk they face from disaster and natural hazards. The concept of sustainable infrastructure refers to equipments and systems that are designed to meet the population's essential service need, including roads, bridge, telephone pylons, hydroelectricity power station, etc., based on all-around sustainable principles. Promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization. By 2030, significantly raise industry share of employment and gross domestic product and double its share in least developed countries. A functioning and resilient infrastructure is the foundation of every successful community. To meet future challenges, our industry and infrastructure, just a minute. Infrastructure must be upgraded from wealth creation, social development, and environment sustainability. Develop more resources efficient machinery that generate less effluent, waste, and pollutant. Apply a circular economy mindset when designing projects so that there is improved end of product recycle, reuse, and recycle. Next. Increase access to financial services and market. Increase the access of small-scale industry and other enterprises, in particular in developing country, to financial services, including affordable credit and their integration into value chains and market. Several barriers of access to financial service have been identified, encompassing lack of money, irregular income, unemployment, cost including high interest rates, distance, low connectivity, and documentation constraints. Access to finance is the ability of individuals and enterprises to obtain financial services, including credit, deposit, payment, insurance, and other risk management services. Financial services help in the development of business by giving them the required financial assistance and guaranteeing losses, etc. Upgrade all industry and infrastructure for sustainability. By 2030, upgrade infrastructure and retrofit industry to make them sustainable with increased resources use efficiency and greater adaptation of clean and environmentally sound technologies and industrial process. Transport infrastructure such as road, railways, and port help to expand trade, to make business more productive, and to reduce prices for consumers. Good transport infrastructure will enable industries to easily move raw materials and finished goods and from the business. Enhance research and upgrade industrial technology. Set of innovative activities undertaken by corporations and government in developing new services or product and improving existing one. Industrial research means planned research or critical investigation aimed at the acquisition of new knowledge and skill for developing new products, process, or services for bringing about a significant improvement in existing product, process, or services.
Means of achieving targets. A. Facilitate sustainable development for developing countries. Facilitate sustainable and resilient infrastructure development in developing countries through enhanced financial, technological, and technical support to African countries, least developed countries, landlocked developing countries, and small island developing states. Support domestic technology development and industrial diversification. Support domestic technology development, research, and innovation in developing countries, including by ensuring a conducive policy environment for inter alia industrial diversification and value addition to commodities. B. Universal access to information and communication technology. It is significantly increase access to information and communication technology and strive to provide universal and affordable access to the internet in least developed countries by 2020.
Challenges. COVID-19 pandemic. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic began in 2020, world manufacturing growth was said to be declining. The pandemic hit industries hard and caused disruption in the value chains of goods and their supply, and has affected the digitization of business and services such as video conferencing, healthcare, teleworking, etc. internet access. More than 4 billion people do not have internet access, and over 90% of these people are found in the developing world. The only way to bridge this digital divide is to make sure that there is massive infrastructure development. Electricity. Approximately 2.6 billion people in the developing nations do not have access to constant electricity, and the renewable energy sectors currently employ more than 2.3 million people, which is predicted to rise to 20 million by 2030. Sanitation. It is believed that 2.3 billion people the world over cannot access basic sanitation due to infrastructure constraints, which cut business productivity in many low income African countries by approximately 40%. Infrastructure. A serious problem that manifests because of the lack of proper infrastructure is that barely 30% of agriculture products in developing countries went through industrial processing as compared to 98% in high income countries. Thank you.
Okay, so infrastructure, which includes internet, etc., and other industries, also deserve recognition and points wherein it has to be sustainable. Of course, it works with your energy, clean water. You can't have good industry, but you sacrifice the other SDGs. You produce waste, you produce waste, water waste, etc., etc. You don't dispose of garbage properly. So it works hand in hand with all of those things. Okay, I understand that you have your 5 p.m. class with radio. We will end our SDGs here. I would have to ask you to upload it in our Teams, your PowerPoint. Please label it SDG, the number, and the title, so that your classmates could review the SDGs for the exam.